The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. These are going to be my Star Wars Rise of Skywalker Easter eggs. Hopefully you've had a chance to see the movie. We're doing a new round of that Star Wars merch giveaway because they finally have Baby Yoda merch on sale. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave your favorite Easter egg from the movie on the video. Big spoiler warning if you have not seen the movie yet, because we'll be talking about all the details, the end of the movie, everything. Starting with number 20, the opening crawl. There's so much information and plot that they convey in that opening crawl. The message that it references that Palpatine sent out is actually something that you could only seen inside Fortnite. There was a special Fortnite integration that the Star Wars people did where they broadcast Palpatine's message within Fortnite. So you actually had to play Fortnite to watch the clip of Palpatine revealing himself to the galaxy that he was back. But the other big Easter egg within the opening crawl is that it refers to Palpatine as a phantom who has returned, as in a callback to the Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace title was about Palpatine and the Sith coming back. Next big one, the planet where Kylo Ren found the Sith Wayfinder at the beginning of the movie is just part of the opening sequence, is on Mustafar, if that wasn't clear. Obviously, we've been there a couple times before. During Revenge of the Sith, I have the high ground, and also during Rogue One, where we saw Darth Vader's castle that he later built after he became Darth Vader. The Sith Wayfinders themselves are actually based on the classic Sith holocrons from the comics and the expanded materials. Once Kylo Ren gets to Exegol, Palpatine reveals that Snoke has been a clone this whole time. There's a giant tank full of Snokes, so a lot of the deformities you can chalk up to cloning heirs, because the ones that are just chilling out in the tank kind of seem like rejects, like these were failed attempts to clone Snoke, and the one that we saw during Last Jedi was just the most recent successful attempt, or semi-successful. There's also a line of dialogue from Palpatine where he says the dark side leads to abilities that others may consider unnatural, a reference to the Palpatine conversation at the opera with Anakin back during Revenge of the Sith. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? When we go to the Millennium Falcon with Finn, Poe, and Chewbacca, they're playing a game of Dejarik on the board just like during A New Hope. When Rey is training with her lightsaber on the obstacle course, she uses a similar fighting style to Emperor Palpatine. A lot of people noticed this back during Last Jedi and even earlier when she was swinging a saber around. Her style seems amazingly similar to the style that Emperor Palpatine used during Revenge of the Sith in his lightsaber fights. The combat remote that she's using is the same one that Luke used on the Millennium Falcon during A New Hope, and then her levitating the rocks and herself is also a callback to Empire Strikes Back when Luke was training with Yoda. She tries to communicate with Force spirits, which they then bring back at the end of the film. That's almost like a whole separate video. I'll talk about some of the biggest cameos, but there were over 25 different Jedi cameos in that scene when she says, "I am all the Jedi." When they go to the festival at the desert of Pisana, C-3PO says it takes place every 42 years. It is now, in real life, 42 years after the debut of Star Wars A New Hope. Lando Calrissian says, "I got a bad feeling about this." They reveal there's a whole deleted subplot with his character being the father of Jannah and her being this long-lost child who was stolen by the First Order, but they had to get rid of it because they didn't have time for it in the movie. They're going to cover it in one of the novels, but if you thought that Jannah was Lando's daughter, you are correct. She is. The brand new droid, D-O, that shows up on the Jedi Hunter ship is voiced by J.J. Abrams, the director. Then when they fall down into the caves and Rey uses her force healing on that giant sandworm, force healing is actually an ability that showed up during the games and some of the expanded material, and now has also shown up on one of the TV shows. No spoilers for the TV shows if you have not been keeping up with the brand new live-action TV shows. One of the next big cameos is during Kijimi when they go into that bar. John Williams himself, the composer who's done the music for all the Star Wars films, is the bartender. He has a bunch of face prosthetics on, but he's pretty identifiable. When they try to read the Sith Wayfinder, they have to wipe C-3PO's mind. The last time he got his mind wiped was at the end of the prequels. Somebody wiped those two droids' minds, even though technically he gets his memory back by the end of the film. They find out that they have to go back to the second Death Star, obviously direct reference to Return of the Jedi, the wreckage, but she uses a special knife in the map to find a special room next to the Emperor's throne. They try to linger a lot when she's walking around the Imperial throne room because later in the movie, Emperor Palpatine says, "You could be Empress Palpatine." So they wanted you to have that image in your mind, remembering her on that second Death Star near the throne. When she sees the dark version of herself, that's obviously just a Force vision, but she's using a double-bladed lightsaber just like the Temple Guards from the animated series. A lot of people wondering about that weird hinge. That's actually something that has shown up in Star Wars before. When she enters the Emperor's throne room on that Death Star, they also start playing John Williams' original score from Return of the Jedi. When Rey goes back to Ahch-To, it's meant to be a bit of a mirror for Luke Skywalker going to Ahch-To and getting rid of his X-Wing by burying it in the water. Rey tries to destroy the TIE fighter, then just like Luke tossed Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber over his shoulder, she tries to toss it into the fire to destroy it. We see his Force Ghost for the first time in the movie. He catches it, letting you know that Force Ghosts can physically interact with the real world. But they also give him a joke about the opening scene of Last Jedi, referencing that when he says, "You should respect the weapon of a Jedi." When she finally gets her shit together, Luke lifts his old X-Wing out of the water just like Yoda, and they play Yoda's theme song from John Williams while it's happening. When Rey and Kylo Ren fight, she winds up killing him, then healing him, and taking off in his TIE fighter. Kylo Ren then slowly turns back into Ben Solo, but not without the efforts of Leia, who's projecting herself and creating this vision of Han Solo. So part of the reason why Han Solo is standing here talking to him, and they do the big callback to the Starkiller base in the moment that he killed him, referencing a lot of that stuff, it's actually Leia that's making this happen. When he's talking to Han Solo, though, he gets ready to say, "Dad, I love you," but Han Solo, as you would expect, stops him short and says, "I know." Direct reference to Empire Strikes Back when Leia said, "I love you." When the final battle begins and all the ships jump into the planet around Exegol and the Imperial fleet with their new Star Destroyers are rising up, their classic Imperial Star Destroyers, not the new First Order ones. The reason why they're so dangerous is because they've been retrofitted with miniaturized versions of the Death Star laser. You assume in the 30 years since Return of the Jedi, they found a way to miniaturize that technology. There are a bunch of cameos during this scene. They bring back older Wedge Antilles from the original series where he calls in. Rey is also flying Red 5, Luke Skywalker's original X-Wing. Within the giant fleet, though, that giant shot you see in the trailer, the Ghost from Star Wars Rebels shows up. There's really pretty much every type of ship you've ever seen in a Star Wars movie or any of the TV shows showing up in that fleet. There's even a ship that looks a little bit like the Razor Crest down here from The Mandalorian, although no confirmation that any kind of Mandalorian stuff is happening during Rise of Skywalker. I know everybody wants to know, where's Baby Yoda? Apparently not in the movie, that's where. When they start to fight Emperor Palpatine, he says to Ben Solo, "You too shall fall just as I once did," and literally throws him down the hole like he got thrown down a hole by Darth Vader. Speaking of Palpatine, when he talks about cloning and transferring his essence like Rey has to kill him, he'll enter her body and she will become the future of the Sith, Empress Palpatine, or he'll just straight up take over her body if she doesn't want to have anything to do with it. That's a direct reference to a lot of the expanded material, especially the Dark Empire comics. There was a subplot where he tried to clone himself and would enter new bodies every time he died. But also during that storyline, Leia was pregnant with her twins that she had in the comics in the expanded universe. Palpatine was also planning on transferring his Force essence into the unborn child in Leia's womb. That's why he was so interested in Leia during that comic book. So he's basically telling Rey the same thing. I'm going to enter your body and either you're going to take over or I'm going to take over you. The Sith lightning on steroids that he uses to destroy a lot of the fleet is also something from the Dark Empire comic where he uses what you would call super lightning to destroy a bunch of ships in space. Rey is also able to deflect the lightning back onto him just like Mace Windu did using the lightsabers. But also, when this is happening, you start to hear a chorus of Jedi cameo voices coming back to the movie. I might do a separate video for all of them because there were so many. There were over 25, but here are some of the biggest ones. Hayden Christensen came back as Anakin Skywalker, telling her, "Bring balance to the Force as I once did." Luminara comes back. Ahsoka Tano comes back. J.J. Abrams even hinted that she was coming back earlier. Turns out it was as a voiceover cameo, meaning that she's dead. We'll have to talk about that too at some point, because when did Ahsoka die? Samuel L. Jackson comes back as Mace Windu, and then two different versions of Obi-Wan Kenobi, both Ewan McGregor's version, and they bring back the Alec Guinness version. You all probably heard Yoda's voice, and they bring back Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn, one of the first people in the movies that started talking about becoming a Force Ghost and learning that ability, even though technically he himself never fully learned how to do it. They addressed a lot of that during the animated Clone Wars series where he helps teach Yoda how to become a Force Ghost, so that when he eventually dies during Return of the Jedi, he becomes a Force Ghost. I know there are a lot of questions about Force Ghosts because Ben Solo gives the rest of his life force to bring Rey back because she dies, so he gives the last of his life force, she comes back, but she doesn't have enough to top him back up, so he winds up dying and then disappears, turning into a Force Ghost himself. A long time ago, the rule used to be you actually had to specially train with people to learn how to become a Force Ghost, but when all Jedis die, their life force transfers back into the greater living force, but when you learn to become a Force ghost, you essentially learn how to retain your identity when you become pure energy like that. They have their big celebration just like at the end of each different Star Wars trilogy. It wouldn't be a Star Wars trilogy if they didn't have a giant party all over the galaxy at the very end. They even go back to Endor and show you a couple Ewoks, one of them being played by Warwick Davis himself, who played Wicket during Return of the Jedi. When Rey goes back to Tatooine and the large family moisture farm to bury the lightsabers, she sits on a piece of metal and slides down the embankment just like she did at the beginning of Force Awakens while the Rey theme song plays. She buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers, which they kind of explained earlier in the film. Leia at one point did train to be a Jedi, made a lightsaber, but short of completing her training, sensed that Ben Solo had been tempted by the dark side, and the fact that her son could fall just shook her so badly she had to stop and gave Luke her lightsaber for a later time. They confirmed that there's been a bit of a time jump because she's had the time, we see, to create a new lightsaber which she pulls out, ignites, and we find out that the blade is yellow and also the hilt is made from pieces of her staff. But the other big thing that's happening is while she's burying these lightsabers and having that moment where she calls herself a Skywalker, seeing Luke and Leia's Force ghost, is that the soundtrack that's playing right now, the theme song, is named A New Home, as in, is this going to be Rey's new home? Will she go live on Tatooine? Because she seems to like the desert so much. No confirmation on that, but the idea is that she has the Jedi tech, so she's probably going to be making a new Jedi temple of her own, seeking out other Force people, which includes Finn, who is Force sensitive during this movie. J.J. Abrams just came out in the past couple of days and said that the thing that Finn was trying to tell Rey throughout the movie but couldn't was that he was Force sensitive and was feeling things through the Force. Like several times, he feels what's happening to her when he's very, very far away. No idea how powerful he is, but he is Force sensitive and could train to become a Jedi after Rise of Skywalker. I'm sure there's a billion more Easter eggs that they try to cram in. They try to make it as fan servicey as possible, including as much stuff as possible. So if there are any big Easter eggs that you spotted that I didn't include in my video, just write them below in the comments. The Mandalorian Episode 8 is going to be the finale. That'll air Friday, so obviously I'll be doing videos for that. There's a bunch of Witcher Netflix stuff that dropped this week, so I'll also be doing that between Star Wars videos. I'll name a new giveaway winner the next time I post one. Everyone, click here for my Mandalorian Episode 7 video, and click here for my Star Wars Rise of Skywalker Top 20 WTF video. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.